Now we're doing leadership skills with Brad Forbes. He's from Advent Source. And I will stop sharing. And it's all yours, Brad.
All right. Thank you, Sean, for being the moderator. Appreciate it. And we're going to spend the next 40 minutes or so talking about leadership skills. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here as we get started. So, leadership skills. What are the big 5 skills that you need as a leader? You're the Adventure Club leader, or you're a support staff, and your director is relying on you to be a leader. What are the things that you need to be effective as a leader? So I'm going to say that the number 1 skill that we need as leaders is time management. As a leader, if you're going to be effective, you need to be able to manage your time well. And I'm going to talk about some things here that seem pretty basic, but a lot of leaders don't implement them. So setting priorities and keeping a calendar of your appointments that reflect those priorities. That's going to be really critical for you, because you need to be proactive in scheduling out, because that's what brings results. If you're always in crisis management, and you will have to be in crisis management sometimes, but if you're always in crisis management, you're going to have a hard time moving ahead as a leader and as a club. And I just say here, if you don't, you need to take appropriate action today in order to make your goals become a reality. So we were talking earlier, and Annie was talking earlier. So you need to be able to make those kits ahead of time and get them to people ahead of time. And if you don't plan that out, things are not going to go as well as they would if you have the kits. One of the things that you got to have as leader is an appointment book. And I say a book, but you know, everyone has a different book. My phone tends to be my book. But you need to have a way to keep your appointments and to keep your calendar. Don't just be writing down on pieces of Post-it notes and trying to stick them there. Your to-do list must be prioritized or be able to be reprioritized. And something that I started doing a number of years ago that has really helped me out is to have a communication and meeting log. So I'm going to see if I can hold this up. So here's mine. It's nice and old-fashioned, just a little steno pad. And anytime I have a meeting or I make a call, I just jot it down. I jot down the date, the time, or if I get together with my team, I just jot it down, because what that does is allow for me to refer back. Now, you know, some of you can remember a lot of things, but as a leader, when you've got all these things coming at you at once, sometimes you need to be able to refer back and say, so what was the decision that we made? There was a lot of discussion there, but I'm not quite sure what the decision was. Or when did I call Jim to make sure that they were going to do that award? Did I call Jim, or did I just think about calling Jim? So this, you've got to integrate time management and ministry projects so that they all fit together. Okay. So I sort of jumped ahead here. Key to effective leadership is tracking the details. So you want to be able to pre-think telephone calls and appointment meetings. If you possibly can, say, so what are we going to do with this, rather than getting at a meeting and saying, so now what are we going to do here? Let me just look here and see. So if you're going to be an effective leader, you need to think those out ahead of time. And I use my little steno pad to record decisions and significant information. I also use it, I put a little A and circle it, and I try to do it in a different color for anything that needs follow-up on that list. So, because sometimes the list gets to be long and some of it's just recording, but some of it is things that I need to follow up on after the meeting, and it may not be right after the meeting, it might be tomorrow, might be the next day. So I want to be able to look back and see, so did I take care of the A things? And then before I meet again with the same group, I just flip back through and say, so what did we do last time? Because what you don't want to do is get into the meeting with the same people and start rehashing the same things. A quick review of what we did last time is good, but then we want to be able to move on to new things. So Peter Drucker is an old guy. He's a management specialist, but I like his what he says. Says any organization, and parentheses is mine, or person, can increase its effectiveness by getting rid of 1/3 of its paperwork. It doesn't matter which third. So I would say, so don't get rid of the third that you send to the conference, because that's really important stuff. But a lot of times we do things just because that's what we're used to doing. That's the way we've done it. So look for ways to be able to say, so what are we, why are we doing this? Are we just doing it because the last director did it? Are we doing it because it's a conference requirement? Or is it just something that someone thought was a good idea and no one's really assessed it? So the number 2 thing that I would say is a critical skill for leaders, for adventure club leaders, is delegation. And I want to start out by saying you want to use delegation to develop others. If you're the director, you want to delegate so that one day you can pass on the directorship or have an associate director. It's something not just to lighten your workload, although it might do that. It's more than giving someone else a job. You need to be able to transfer authority, responsibility, and accountability in order for it to be delegation. So I'm going to go back to, I've clicked the wrong way here. So here's the benefits, and I think that you all know the benefits of delegation, but let's talk about them here. By delegating, you can increase the number of things that you can do. So you might be very talented and be able to handle 30 different things. And if you're able to delegate, you could probably double that or maybe triple that if you delegate effectively. As I said earlier, that one of the benefits is that you develop leaders. So we're going to talk later about, you don't just delegate to everything to everyone. You're developing leaders. So you delegate small tasks to young leaders or to new leaders, and then build them up. Delegation can prevent burnout. If you've got more than the things that you can possibly get done for too many years in a row, most of us would burn out. If you delegate to people, it increases their confidence and trust. So you delegate to them, they do it, they feel good, you are more confident that they did it, or can work with them to say, okay, I gave you that, let's talk about it. Maybe this is something you should have done instead, and give them another chance. We all look at things differently, and one of the things about delegating is if you delegate it to someone and give them the authority and the responsibility, they're going to use their own creativity. It might be a different way than what you're doing it, and that may be okay, as long as it's not illegal and it's not something that is a safety issue. You know, allowing for people that you delegate to use their creativity is a positive thing. And then the last thing I would say for benefits is it just broadens the base for ownership. People who are involved in leading. It becomes theirs. It's not, this is the director's club, this is our club. So why would leaders not delegate? Why do we have leaders who are holding on to things? Well, one reason is certainly that some leaders are fearful that they're going to lose their authority. If they delegate to someone else, they're not going to be the person that's in charge. If they tell someone how to do something, or that person has as much information as they do, now they don't have the authority over those people. Another fear is that the work will be done poorly. And I would say that if you delegate inappropriately, there's a chance that the work will be done poorly. Some leaders, and a leader that is insecure in their position, might fear that someone else can do it better than them and will make them look bad because they're better. Delegation takes time, and some people just aren't willing to take the time or don't feel like they have the time required to delegate effectively. Some people just don't want to depend on others. You've heard the saying, if I want it done right, I'll do it myself. So that the person with that mindset is probably not going to be a delegator. But I would say that the reason that most people don't delegate is that we just don't know how to delegate effectively. We may have gotten burned before. People didn't do the job right. They didn't do it appropriately, and so we just said, okay, we're not going to delegate anymore. And then we go to the saying, if I want it done right, I'll do it myself. So there are some common mistakes in delegation that if you're thinking, okay, what can I do to delegate? What can I do to share the responsibilities of a club? So one of the mistakes is a failure to understand how the other person views the situation. So if they don't have all the information that they need in order to move ahead, they're going to be operating from the information that they have. So if you're going to delegate something, you need to make sure that they're very clear about, this is what we're getting into, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and this is the responsibility that I'm passing off to you. The other thing that leaders do is they don't give the authority. They're just viewing them as gophers. Do this, do this, do this. Don't ask any questions, just do what you're told. That's not delegation. It might be something that needs to happen sometimes, but if you're wanting to delegate something, you're going to want to be able to explain to them, so this is what we're trying to accomplish. I need for you to do this. The last thing that I'm going to say is a common mistake is a failure to stay in touch. So just delegating something, you delegate a task to one of your staff for next month. And then the next time they hear from you or anything about it is when you get to club meeting and they say, are you ready for this? Well, if they are experienced, if they've done this before, that will be no problem. But if they're a brand new person, you probably want to, after you've delegated that task to them, check in with them and see. So remember, you're doing this next month. You have any questions, any concerns? Is there anything that I can do? That's part of delegation. Part of delegation isn't just having other people do stuff. So here's my action list for you if you want to effectively delegate. So decide what tasks need to be or can be delegated. Make up your list. These are the things that I'm going to delegate. decide who the qualified people are. And when you have the list of things and have the people, you're going to want to match them appropriately. People with more experience, with more wisdom will get things that need someone there who has wisdom. People who don't have the experience are going to get entry things, but they're still going to be important. They're just not going to be as critical to you achieving your goals. You're going to clearly present the goals. Most times when people fail, they really don't know what they're supposed to do. Even though they maybe heard it, they don't understand what they're going to do. Point out to them some resources, some things that they could use. They may not have to use them, but they could. And then explain to them the importance of this, why it's important, and what happens if it doesn't go well. Be right up front with them. You know, if you don't come next month with a program, we're going to have 15 minutes with our club of kids where we're going to have nothing to do. Okay. Clarify boundaries of authority. This is what you're allowed to do, or these are things that are outside of your limits. So, for instance, I'm keep going back to the club thing and club programming. So the boundaries may be that if you want to spend money to do something, it's in our budget to do $25 worth of whatever it is. You don't want to say, yes, you can go ahead and spend money, and then afterwards have them show up with a bill for $100, and it was a really great activity, but we don't have the $100 in our budget. When you're delegating, we need to leave room for mistakes. Mistakes are how learning happens, so you don't want to have mistakes where there's safety involved, but if things don't go perfectly, leave a little room there. You know, you probably as the leader have the closest expectation of what's supposed to happen, and actually other people looking in may not even know that it was not exactly what you had talked about. So give a little room there, and give lots of praise along the way. Everyone wants to be affirmed, and if things didn't go well, you can praise them for the effort that they gave, for being willing to take it on, and then talk about, so next time let's think about doing this. So 2 down, 3 to go. Number 3 is team building. If you're a leader, you need to be able to build your team. And so here's what Myron Rush says: a team is not just a group of people assigned to one leader or a department. We could have put or adventure club director. A team is 2 or more people moving along a path of interaction towards a common goal. And that's really what we want our staff of our adventure clubs to be. We want our staff to be a group of people that's moving together for a common goal to engage our kids. And adventure club are the kids and their parents in a journey of discipleship where they encounter Jesus and they choose Jesus, and then they choose to live with Jesus as their best friend for the rest of their life. We need to be locked in on, so what is it that we're trying to do here as a team? So the great thing about a team is that team members can help each other out when difficulties arise. So if you're there by yourself and difficulties arrive, you've got to deal with it by yourself. But with a team, you'll have different ways of looking at it. You have different perspectives, different abilities. And so if a difficulty arises, someone can step in that maybe wasn't assigned to that. Whereas again, like I was saying, if you're there by yourself, or if you leave someone else by themselves, then it's just them against whatever the difficulty is or the challenge is that comes. So the two most important things in a team is you have shared vision and goals and common values. And if I were to be talking to you as an adventure club leader, as you're starting the year here, I would say, make sure that your team knows, your adult leadership team knows what we're going to try to do together. I watch sports and I like sports, and so with sports, the team gets together and says, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do these things. Our goal is to win. Well, we've got the same thing with Adventure Club. We're going to do certain things, but our win is just different than just putting up points. Our win is to make a difference in kids' lives. And so making sure that those are the common values, that actually the club points or the behavior of the kids or some of those other things are, while they may be important, are peripheral to our common value of what you want to do. Make sure that your team's on the same page. So I want to just talk here just a little bit more. I'm going to digress just a little bit about leadership and say you as a leader are going to have this fine balance. Sometimes it's finer than others, between being a truth teller and a grace giver. And you know what I mean? I mean, the truth is the truth. So just tell it, right? Well, what about grace? Grace is given to all. So as a leader, you're going to have to decide, when is the truth the truth? Is it important to say the truth and to make sure that they understand the truth? And when are you going to say, be able to say, well, that wasn't exactly how we talked about it. That wasn't what you agreed on doing. I'm just telling you the truth. You didn't do what we agreed to do. Or are you going to say, internally, I want to be grace giving. So let's talk about how that went. How did you feel about that? What could we have done better? What are we going to do next time? And I would just tell you that for me, that line has become fuzzier as my years is stacked on. When I was younger, the truth was much clearer to me as far as saying, this is the way, this is what you should do, this is what you agreed to do. You signed that you were going to do this as a staff member or as a club member or as a parent, and you didn't do what you said you were going to do. So these are the consequences. But sometimes there will be consequences. But I'm just going to say to you that I believe that as Christian leaders, we are called to do truth-telling and to give grace. And it's our responsibility to work with each individual to help them to be able to grow as leaders and as disciples of Jesus. And so you're going to have to decide, where's the balance there. The other thing that I would say to you is, in the United States, over many years, our teams have become more and more multicultural. So one of the things that you and the leaders in your group need to be aware and understand, that depending on your cultural heritage, you will look at things quite differently and will interpret them quite differently. And so I would encourage you as leaders, and this could be, actually I do a whole seminar on this, cultural competencies, but that you as a leader develop some cultural competencies. I mean, I just have to tell you just a quick little story that on the cultural competencies, and it's a story on my friends that I met. I was up in Alberta giving this cultural competencies, and a couple when we were doing debriefing, they told their story. So he's from Alberta and she's from, I think, Honduras. Anyway, in a country in Inner America. And they told the story about how that their families looked at whether you cleaned your bowl completely as being offensive or as being non-offensive. So the husband would clean his bowl all the way to the bottom, which was a sign that when he was down there that they would keep filling. So they kept filling, kept filling, kept filling. He kept cleaning, kept cleaning. Well, he needed to stop a bit earlier to give the cue that, you know, it's very good, I'm done. She never ate her bowl to the bottom, and the family there always thought that she didn't like what they served. Well, that wasn't true at all. It was a cultural thing that once they realized, and they had the whole group just roaring because they were telling this story back and forth, their experience as they're courting. They weren't married yet. So develop cultural competencies. The fourth one is going to be conflict management. And we talked about this earlier, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I just do want to say that engaging in a loving Christian community doesn't mean there will be no conflict. And we talked about what we could do earlier about that. But that is a key thing that leaders need to be able to address. And then the last thing I would say as for you as leader is that you need to be able to be a vision caster, to be able to say to your team, this is where we want to go. This is what we want to do. We may not be there yet, but this is where we're headed. We want to inspire our team members to say, if we do this, we're going to take a step towards being better. We're going to take a step towards being better club, being better connected, doing the curriculum better, doing more honors, doing activities where we can connect with staff and kids and parents. What can we do? We've got half the parents that are engaged right now. What would happen if we had 75% of the parents that were engaged in Adventure Club ministry? So let's talk about skills development here as we wrap up. So leadership and management skills are developed over time, and sharpening those skills is something that we need to always be doing. I don't think that there's ever a point where we say, well, I've got all the skills down, and so I just need to coast. There's always something more that we can do. And that's one of the great things about leadership. Leadership is described as doing the right thing. We should not lose the perspective that we also need to do things right. So making sure that you've got additional skills, that you know what you want to do. So I skipped over that one. So I sent, and I hope that it's available on the forms. I sent a long list of skills that I hope that you'll take and download. And here they are. There's a whole bunch of them there. And I'm not going to read them through, but these are things that are skills that leaders should have. You don't have to have all of them. You don't have to rank 5 on all of them. What I'm going to suggest that you do is that you mark 5 of them that you would like to develop. So just take 5 of them. Don't go after the whole list. What are the 5 on that list that you would like to develop? And then look for ways to develop those. Focus in on those as a leader. Look for mentors who can coach you. If it's a leader, a financial leader, if it's a leader in your church, if it's a leader in the community, if it's your area coordinator, what skill do you need to get better at that you can ask someone, you know, I'm really trying to work on this to grow my leadership skills. would you mentor me on this? And then the other thing that I would say is, as you're building your team, look at this list and say, I'm looking for people who can complement me. I've got a sort of flat spot on this, and yeah, I'm working on it, but this someone else could help me. If they're on the team, they could help me complement our leadership skills. So as a team, we've got the whole wheel nice and round, and it'll be able to roll nice and smoothly. So here's my last slide here, and we'll be ready for some questions. So here's what Tom Peters says, and I love this. Find the specialness in people, set them free to reach their potential, believe in them, affirm them, rebuke them when necessary, and care for them. So recommended resources, I put these on the handout that I gave. But some leadership resources and also the crucial confrontations that I mentioned earlier this morning. So Sean, that's what I have about leadership, and I would be happy to take some questions if there are any.
So I just wanted to mention the handout that you wanted to provide everyone is in the link in the chat box.
Great, thank you.
If they just hop over to the chat box and click on that, they can download the resource. One of the questions that I have here is, what is your favorite book when it comes to leadership?
Well, so I'm a big John Maxwell fan. I like John Maxwell, and he has a number of books. I don't think I could pick a favorite one, but he has great leadership, and it's Christian leadership. So you can read. There's some great secular leadership resources out there, but really, the more I learned about leadership, the more I realized that there's quite a big gulf between leaders in the secular community, and particularly in the business world, and leaders that look at leadership from a Christian perspective. So I would say do something that's John Maxwell on leadership. There's several of them.
So you also mentioned how time management is such a crucial component to a leader. Do you have any favorite resources, a book, or even a podcast that you would recommend?
I don't. I know that there are some podcasts. For me, this was more about making sure that I managed what I did and what I committed to. And for me, it was going digital. When I was able, the big switch for me, I had a big day timer that I hauled around. And for me, it was always a challenge getting my stuff in there, my list, my to-do list. I would end up writing notes on a piece of paper and say, I've got to put that in my day timer. Well, now I say, if it isn't in my phone calendar and to-do list, it isn't happening. Because and just having the it took me, and still, I mean, it's not like I do it every time, but it took me a long time to get used to saying, okay, that's got to go on the calendar. It's got to go on the calendar. The great thing, of course, about having it on my phone is I've got it on my computer, so it's everywhere, buzzing and beeping. And I'll send I'll set up my reminders. I really like at the beginning of the week to just do an overview of the week, what I'm going to accomplish, what my calendar is. And that also helps me set my expectations, because every week's not the same.
So back to an example that you put in your slide deck, you were talking about that guy that mentioned if you can get rid of a third of your paperwork, you can become more effective. Do you happen to have an example of where you've done that? Yeah.
Well, in my personal life, well, let me see. Do I want to go with? Well, let me go with my with work here at AdventSource. So we are in the middle of a pretty seismic shift here. We've been working on it for over a year. So when you guys place orders now at AdventSource, whether you do it on the phone or do it on the computer, at some point someone prints off that order. It prints off two of them, and then we put them in order of how they should be picked. So someone's going through, shuffling through all of that, and then they grab them. The picker grabs them and goes to each shelf. So on Tuesday, we tested for the first time a system that does away with all that paper. We're going completely. The pickers are going to have little phones that they put on their hand, and they're having a little scanner that they put on their finger. Well, this is going to be a huge, huge change because that paper ripples through our whole organization. You know, we got it there, and then people write on the paper, and then we've got to scan it in, so we have the records. I keep telling a couple of people, you're going to have a lot more time to do things than what you had before, because we were pushing around all this paper. So that's an example of what I did personally. I mean, professionally. Personally, what I did is I got rid of the day timer and went electronic.
Yeah.
And so it's funny, and it's a little scary, you know, because it's not like I'm a paperless person. If I showed you my desk here, I've got plenty of paper.
I work in the realm of IT, so I can understand where you're in touch with paper, how important that is. One of the other things in your presentation, you were talking about delegation. And so when did you start realizing the advantages of delegation? And if you could, give us an example.
Well, I experienced delegation probably at a relatively young age. My parents were pretty big into chores. So you know, these were and it wasn't just we did the dishes and we did, but so I'm a missionary kid. You know, grew up in Malawi, Africa, and for my formative years, 10, 11, 12, 13, we were on a mission station out in the middle of nowhere, and the garden was a mile away, half a mile down, and so one of my jobs would be to go down there and water. And so, you know, my parents didn't just tell me, they took and showed me, this is how we're going to water. Take a 5-gallon drum, you know, the whole drill. So then when I was in college, actually when I was working at Camp Yorktown Bay, Pastor Bill starts delegating things to me. So I experienced it. So when I graduated, and I graduated with a degree in business management. So I've been sort of told that this is something that I should do as a business person. But I wanted it to be done right. And I was working with college students. I was me, and the rest of my team were all college students. And I'll tell you, I shied away from delegating anything that was that would make me look bad. And it took me a while before I learned that sort of for me, the process was sort of a training process where you watch me do it, then we'll do it together. I'll watch you do it, and then you go ahead and do it. But that's been I'll tell you, Sean, that's been an ongoing thing for me. I mentioned earlier on that Forbes have the curse of knowing how to do it right. So as I was watching the training of us trying to go to paperless, I stood there and whispered in my treasurer's ear. I said, "It's all I can do to not jump in and say this is how you should be doing it." But the fact is, my operations leader did fine. He's learning. we debriefed afterwards, and it's going to be better because it isn't me, because it's him. Because the fact is, I'm not going to be there, on next month. He's going to be there. So anyway,
Well,
I digress.
along with the delegation, there's a question here is how do you get a person to accept the delegated tasks? Sometimes this can be reluctant.
Yeah. Well, I would say I wouldn't delegate to someone who is unwilling, because that's a recipe for disaster. But one of the things you might consider is if you're delegating something that the person doesn't feel like that they have the skills, the competency level, or are willing to commit to that level. So could you scale back and start with something smaller, something that you know that they have the skills to do, that they can be successful, and then they can grow. Some people have been burned. They've been given something to do, and not done it well, and have not been successful, have been chastised for it, and they will not do that again. So you're going to have to slowly sort of wean them back in.
And that does make sense. And you had on one of your slides talking about the visioning or casting a vision.
Yeah.
And I know how important that is. I've seen it in our club here in Bentonville. And it seems like there's a niche on how to do it effectively. Do you have an example where you can, create that vision so that everybody just gets it and, it brings something new to the table?
Well, for me, one of the things that I see that's important is that casting vision is a long-term proposition. You don't just cast a vision and then say, oh, well, that wasn't the right vision, and then you head off another direction, and then you head out of another direction. After you do that a couple times, people say, well, they don't know what in the world they're doing. So when you cast a vision as a leader, it's got to be big enough, and you've got to be sticking with it for long enough so that people start saying, oh, well, they're saying the same thing over and over again. Maybe they actually mean it. Because we are used to being sort of just pulled around. Here's the new program, here's the new thing. So we're going to be, and then the other thing that I would say is, as you're casting that vision, look for some specific things that your team can do and can celebrate, and tie it into that vision. It may even be a long reach, but you say, this is a step, an important step about getting the vision of, I'm not pulling something right off, but having our vision of having all of the kids, or 75% of the Pathfinder age kids in our church, in our club. So we've got 40%. That is great. Let's celebrate that. We've got 40%, and we're just going. And you have to set reasonable. I would say, don't cast a vision that is obviously not attainable. Now, some people will challenge me on that and say, well, but if you pray, and you and I'm saying, don't discount that, but don't discount prayer, don't discount faith, but cast visions that are attainable, that you can go towards and people can celebrate.
So then this is the one last question, and it's following up with the vision statements that you were talking about. I guess to build an effective vision statement, is it something where you have to have like a number to it? Because you were mentioning, get 40% of all your youth in your church.
No, I would say I don't think that I would put it actually as the vision statement. I would say the vision statement would be something like to engage all the kids in our community in Pathfinder, in Adventure Club ministry, all of the families with eligible kids. That could be the vision. And then you say, okay, we're gonna shoot for 40%. Maybe I wasn't really clear on that. So we're going to shoot for 40%, or we're going to shoot for 20%, or this is what we've got now. We're going to try to get 10 more eligible families, because in Pathfinder and Adventure Club ministry, it goes up and down. You can't always just grow, because those crazy kids grow up and they move on. If they're adventures, you may have a big adventure club, and then all of a sudden, boop, they were all helping hands, and now they're friends. So, where'd all the kids go? Well, so you want to look and say, so out of the eligible people, and then I would also say that we want to make sure that we are focusing, when you cast the vision, on changing people's lives, changing families' lives, engaging families in Adventure Club ministry. And so maybe your vision statement, and you're just going to have to think about this, maybe your vision statement has more to do with, we're going to be a place that parents want to bring their kids and want to stay and be engaged all week long with their kids. We're going to be the place that encourages that. And then you just celebrate that as you go along. And that gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you figure out the little things. Okay, we're doing these things. Well, let's just add one more to the loop. You don't have to do it all to begin with.
Well, we would like to thank you for your time.
Sure.
It is now